So if I'm going in and being like, hey, Cindy, last week you said you would take a meeting with me and now it's this week and you're not taking a meeting with me, it's not helping my prospects. So I need to lean in and say, what else can I add to their strategy? What else can I uncover about their pain? And as long as I'm doing those things, I feel comfortable being really direct on the phone. I think in enterprise, people appreciate that more so.
I'm OG, y'all new to the game.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Here for another segmentation of Talent Thursday. And this is, again, a special thing that I'm doing here where I'm just grabbing people that are reps that had impact in the training and just sharing best practices on what they learned. But also at the same time, I've been getting asked questions a lot of, hey, Morgan, what do I do specifically if I'm in this industry and selling with these people? And I don't have the most specific answer because I'm not in all these industries. I only train them. So I'm bringing reps for you guys that are on the front lines doing this on a day-to-day basis so you can get specific answers on what you're looking for and people you can follow up with and ask questions to. So I have Alouette here from Sprout Social, and she's on the enterprise side from the SDR standpoint. So she's going to touch on a couple questions that I have here for her. But before we do that, Alouette, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi guys, so I've been selling enterprise for a while at Jellyvision in HR tech, and now it's Sprout Social in the social media space. Enterprise is my favorite space out of all of the segments. It's really complex, and I've enjoyed my journey at both companies getting to know the space better.
Absolutely. So first of all, we're going to start with the first question is, what were your top 3 takeaways from the training?
Well, Morgan, you know I loved the Morgan Ingram training because I tell you probably on a bi-weekly basis. So my top 3 takeaways, I think first was to work smart and not just work hard. I think as reps, we can get into this pattern of just kind of aggressively dialing and emailing and putting out touches. But what the training did for me was really refocus me on how am I bucketing my time? How am I being strategic about my approach? And there are things that seem like they might be basic, but having those reminders and then seeing them contextualized within the different segments and within our product was extremely helpful. I think the second takeaway was details matter. Your training picked up on so many tiny little nuances, everything from the Casper email to how are you talking Vidyards that really do make the difference in how your prospects reply to you. So I think it's that finesse that you need at the enterprise level to succeed. So that was a good reminder. And then the last one, keep a steady mindset. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. In enterprise, your highs are really high and your lows are really, really low.
Yep.
So that steady mindset and being able to focus on what you want to achieve is such a good reminder.
Absolutely. And I think mindset is something big that a lot of people don't talk about. I think it's critical. It's a thing that we all should know, hey, have a steady mindset, but to actually have that is what leads to that success. And goes into like my next question there is, everyone has expectations before they go into training, and then they obviously have certain things that they feel after. So what were yours as a whole, expectations before coming in, and then after, how did you feel about it?
My expectations coming in, I think you talk to any like cynical enterprise rep about a training and they're going to automatically think someone's going to come in and tell me to smile and dial. So I was ready to kind of just hear a review of other things I've heard in trainings. But what I think I walked out afterward with was a really elegant just fusion of the basics of outbounding, which we all need reminders on no matter how seasoned we are, kind of mixed in with that call to personal excellence, which you do such a good job at, really making sure reps understand what they need to put in personally to drive results. And then finally capping it with that kind of industry knowledge, like what are the things that broadly apply to every rep, no matter what company they're at, no matter what industry they're in, that make you stand out in the sales process. And so I think the way those 3 things talk to each other is really what I walked away with from the training and set me up for success in this quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about success leads to my last question here is, any impact or results that you've seen thus far from the training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the most encouraging things for me that I've taken away from the training are seeing results from those little things, even things like the Casper email template you gave. I got a no-show within 35 seconds, which in enterprise just feels like Christmas morning. You're like, someone
like, let's go. Exactly.
And then I think the more broader strategic principles that you laid out have helped me really effectively back into pipeline. So one of my personal goals is to drive pipeline at a really high level. Look at bringing in those bigger conversations with those great players, maybe those deals that are more surprising. That's the thing that gets me excited to come to work every day. And that's where I've seen the Morgan Ingram training really help drive my results.
Awesome. So I appreciate that background there. And a lot of things you've been mentioning is enterprise. So we want to turn the tables on you and just share your best practices for listening. So can you walk me through your process when it comes to enterprise level accounts within your space? And for context, I know you'll dive into it, but they're reaching out to marketers. So for those who reach out to marketers, this is something to listen to here as well.
Yes, reaching out to marketers. And to give further context, we are operating within a named book. So that details a lot of how I go about my prospecting. I understand it might not be that way for everyone, but if you are working within a named book, I think this is a helpful strategy. I've been tweaking it a lot, actually, as I've been going into quarter 4. And one of the things I'm excited about is I am starting to prospect first by industry, second by persona, and third by KPI relevance. And that's where I really started to see some good results for myself. Is as I was thinking about going through my touches, one of the things you mentioned, Morgan, is that every touch should contribute to the story that you are telling a company. And in order to create scalable efficiency in your process on the enterprise level, you need to really dial in on what are those make or break KPIs for my persona that I need to talk to them about that are going to make them feel immediate and urgent pain and take a meeting with me.
Absolutely.
And so breaking out your territory into messaging that you can effectively apply to each of those verticals is what's making me successful. It does mean at the beginning of the month, I spend a lot of time setting up how I'm going to prospect for the entire month. So I kind of have my game plan walking into a month, and I know exactly who I'm going to be talking to, why I'm going to be talking to them, and then I have it siloed so it can be efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important because you're setting yourself up for the month at the beginning. And, you know, I said this in the training, and I always tell people, if you don't have an organized schedule, or if you do have an organized schedule, you'll have organized results. If you don't have an organized schedule and you're sporadic, your results will be all over the place, and you won't really understand why you're getting that. And especially in an enterprise level, if you don't have things organized, if you don't have a strategic plan, you're going to be all over the place. And that leads into the next piece, which is, how are you generating urgency as an SDR within your enterprise level named accounts, especially when you're reaching out to marketers and they have so many different projects that are on their plate?
Right, so marketers have a ton of things going on. One of the things I've recently started learning about marketers is they have huge tech stacks that they are sitting on. So there's probably 15 of me reaching out in the social space. There's probably 45 more of me reaching out for other parts of their team.
Yep.
So understanding how crowded the space is really important as to how you drive urgency. And I think the second thing I'm really learning is that in enterprise, it is purely a timing game. That is all that you are playing. And I think first when I realized that, I got a little bit discouraged, like as any enterprise rep will, you kind of go through this period of thinking, if I don't catch this account at exactly the right time, it's just like an immediate close lost, like no op, can't touch it for another 2 years or whenever timing will be. And one of the things I've started to realize is that timing is way more nuanced than just readiness to buy. It's great when you can catch people at that stage of I'm ready to buy, but there are plenty of other stages within their year. There's financial planning, there's analysis, there's times where they're digging into their reporting. And so going into each of those time buckets and understanding how their year looks is really a great way to create urgency, because if someone throws me the objection on the phone, hey, Alouette, great talking to you. I'm not going to take a meeting right now because I'm working on my budget. I can go back in and say, all I'm doing is offering you time with an industry expert to set you up well for the year. So if you're planning your budget, maybe a conversation now would be valuable. So as you're backing in your budget, you know what's out there and you know what to plan for. It's just little simple tweaks like that that is convincing them that taking 30 minutes of their time to have a conversation is a really worthwhile investment in their strategy.
Absolutely. And how are you, that's just mutual plans that you're setting up with them as you're scheduling meetings throughout the way as well?
Yeah, so I have prospects in my book that I've been talking to for probably 4 months on timing, and it becomes more of those strategic check-ins like, hey, Sally, I know I talked to you, 2 weeks ago and you were bringing in a consultant and you were aligning your marketing strategy for the entire year with your VP. How are those things going? Places we can lean in. So it becomes more of that long-term consultative relationship. You get a lot fewer quick wins, but the wins you do get are really fun.
They matter. Yeah, no, absolutely. And in that, you're setting up the process. You're giving people some good tips here across the board. Now, the one thing that's when I was selling to marketers that we always had a challenge with this is being direct without being too pushy and having someone be like, don't talk to me. So, and especially enterprise, how are you being direct with these marketing leaders without being pushy here?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm actively working on as a rep. I'm a little challenged, maybe, like down to my very soul. I love like kind of pushing people's buttons on the phone and getting them to react to me. But that's not always a strategy, especially in enterprise. So it's something I've had to kind of tame and how I'm naturally set up to function on the phone. And one of my like kind of personal rules for myself is every conversation I have has to add strategic value. So if I'm going in and being like, hey, Cindy, last week you said you would take a meeting with me and now it's this week and you're not taking a meeting with me, it's not helping my prospects. I need to lean in and say, what else can I add to their strategy? What else can I uncover about their pain? And as long as I'm doing those things, I feel comfortable being really direct on the phone. I think in enterprise, people appreciate that more so, just because there is that they're dealing with. On a call last week, there was a girl who was talking to me about her strategy, and she operated on a franchise model and didn't really have a good global strategy. So I felt comfortable calling that out and being like, hey, listen, it sounds like you don't have an enterprise strategy plan. I think a conversation would be really valuable to help you at least get started as you're coming up with it. So being able to call out when things aren't going well is a really good skill to develop for enterprise.
Absolutely. And it's using what that person's saying as a challenge, not challenging to challenge. I think that's the biggest piece, and not making it rude. It's just like, oh, I'm being direct because I'm trying to help you here, and then cut through the noise of all the other things we have to go through. And my lasting question here is, as we're having this conversation about, you've given a lot of great things in process. What's your number one tip for enterprise SDRs that maybe have been in the role and maybe new people that are coming in? Like, what is your number one tip that you've learned?
I mean, other than keep dialing, which is really important.
Yeah.
I think my number one tip is to understand the length of the game that you're playing. I think one of the things I struggle most with in my role is just understanding that it takes like 6 to 7 months to nurture these ops. And as SDR, you want that promotion, you want that next step. That can feel like a frustrating game to play. So kind of reeling yourself back in from all that emotion around quota and promotion and being able to say, how am I adding value to these accounts? How am I adding value to my company? Is like kind of the best headspace you can get in to tackle enterprise.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, Alouette, thank you so much for giving us some tips and breaking down some stuff that other people can use in their enterprise SDR role and across the board. So before we do in this episode, any shout outs, any lasting things you want to say, words of wisdom before we get out of here?
Last things I want to say, first of all, go ahead and take the Morgan Ingram training if you haven't already done it.
Thank you.
Probably one of the best investments you will make in your role as an SDR. I found it really, really valuable. Talk to your managers, do whatever you have to do. Second, keep dialing, just like Morgan says.
Awesome. Well, Alouette, thank you so much for taking the time here and sharing some knowledge with everybody. And as I always say, guys, keep dialing.